Before mankind existed, they were primitive people until a giant rock from space killed them all. The 8 that survived managed to work with the object that they had to create Java as we know it today. These 8 primitive values are called byte, short, long, int, float, double, boolean, and char.
One eternity later.
Hey everyone, it's me, Pizza Parker, your friendly neighborhood pizza man.
In this program, you're going to be getting pizza time with Peter Parker. So let me just put in my name here. And as you can see over here, Peter's very explicit about that. Let's see what happens if we click no.
Pizza time.
No.
Uh-oh. And what about cancel?
He deserved it, didn't he? Wanted. Pizza time.
I guess we only have one choice here. Ah. The beautiful GUI of my program. Clearly, state of the art, as clean as it could possibly be. So, let's put in a pizza type. I'm just going to write pizza. And let's put a price of $17. Let's order now. Good. Pizza Parker's letting us live. Okay, so now on to commenting. Commenting's probably the most important thing when submitting a project or working with someone else, because if you're doing this on your own, you definitely will understand, but when sharing it with someone else, 99% of the time, they'll not have a single clue what you're doing, especially when you're someone like me and you're just obsessed with pizza time. So what exactly can you do with comments? Well, comments are typically used to give a form of guidance to something. This right here, it's telling you exactly what it's doing in poor written words. But yeah, a comment can be made by using a double slash and writing a text. Or if you want to have multiple spaces, multiple lines taken up for one specific thing, or you want to take out a portion of your code and just comment it out for now so it's not being used. If you use a backslash or forward slash, think that's a backslash, followed by a star, and then you can take wherever you want to continue your code from, so star to backslash, and see it won't comment that out. And everything inside this area is going to be commented out. If you do something like backslash and only to start and not have to close, it will comment everything out, which is not great because it will break your program. And one last thing is the option to collapse. You click plus and boom, all this code. Now this stuff is like, it kind of gets in the way, especially when you're looking at the other stuff. But how you do that is you do the normal code line followed by this. So an editor fold and then default state, it's essentially like any other method in Java, just meant for comments, which is pretty cool. And like it is, default state is collapsed. So when you open up a project, it will leave it as it is. And then description is what it says. So when it's left alone, boom, easy peasy. And right at the end, you just add another double backslash and finish it off with a editor fold. So probably the most commonly used operator in all of Java is the dot operator. So you may be asking, what exactly is that? And I don't think I see it, but you actually do. Check this out. Let's just put in the word dot. Literally everything right here is using a dot operator, just the period. And so what is that doing exactly? Well, it is separating different sections of your code, I guess is the worst description you could say. Yeah, hold up a minute. code that's outside the object class must use an object reference operator. Yeah. So pretty much the dot operator, it splits up whatever you have for your code. For example, we can use my JPanel. It has different sections right here. And so what it's doing is it's accessing something from another spot in my code. So set size is one of the methods with the Java Swing class. And pretty much what it's doing is it's getting my JPanel and it's accessing this method to change the size of the panel inside my JFrame. Same thing with the set layout. It's accessing that method and the add method, where then I can add all these different things. Okay, next up is exception handling. So you might know a few things with exception handling already, such as if statements. For example, right here, where we have our if our t, which is the string for type, is not equal to pizza, then Peter Parker will say that you lied, Uncle Ben. But the more reformed version of that, which catches errors, is the try and catch. So, as you can see right here, what I'm trying to do is I am trying to go, and once I get my values, it access the method. Now, if something doesn't work, what it does is it will send you the exception, which is the catch. And this is basically for whatever error that it will find, it will return whatever's in here. So in this case, it will output to the screen, oh no, the oven broke, no pizza for you. And then it will dispose of the frame, which, because there's no other code to run, will end the program. Try catch and any exception handling is super useful on more complicated programs. Mine, it's never going to break, so it's not really that useful here. But when you're looking at something with hundreds of variables inside, it's going to be pretty dang useful. If-else statements are good for what they are, but they don't catch anything. They only catch one thing, and it's not even an error. Sometimes that doesn't even work. So try catch is really the way to go. If else is more of a option kind of thing than anything like that.
Have you ever tried to win over a Minecraft girlfriend, but your powerful words like the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell are not working at winning her over? Well, try this. An object is an instance of a class. So, on to classes, objects, and methods. What exactly are these things? Well, a class is something that describes the contents of the objects that belong to it. This is basically what every object in Java is based off of, including those that come with the software, such as math and things like JFrame and all that stuff. Like I said earlier, objects are an instance of a class. That means that objects will have all the attributes that the class that it belongs to describe it to have. It also means that this object will have unique values according to whatever is put in for these values. This is typically seen inside the constructor, which we'll get to later. Just looking at this simple example I made here, we would see that the class would be a human. So all humans have hair, eyes, mouths, and they can do things like think, eat, and sleep. So these things would be set as the base instant variables for the first three, and then methods of the class, which would be think, eat, and sleep. Methods can also be implemented in the object uniquely, but if it's something that everyone does, you could also put it in the class if you'd like. Now, the object here is Peter Parker. Of course it is. He has brown hair, brown eyes, and a normal mouth. And The one method that we have for Peter Parker is pizza time, which we'll just call it a variation of eat.
So right now we are going to be covering constructors, overloading, and the default constructor. So what exactly is a constructor? Well, for every class, you're going to have your instant variables, and you'll have your methods and whatever it may be. Objects are instances of a class, so they will still have the same parameters, such as these variables right here, but they will always be unique to whatever it is. Now, when an object is created, it will have a constructor typically with it. When an object is created without any parameters or anything given, that is the default constructor, which then will set all the object's values to null. The default constructor isn't often used for objects that store data of types. They're typically used more or less for objects of classes, such as ones that would have the GUI inside of it, where data is not necessarily the most important thing, or is best preferred to be left as null, as then the user can input whatever data they need. Now that you know what a default constructor is, let's move on to a regular constructor. So, in a regular constructor, as you can see right here, you will have parameters. Now these parameters are the variables that you're going to bring in from wherever you're creating this object. These parameters right here are used then to initialize the values according to the instant variables. So in this example, type will be equal to t, n is name, and price is p. Overloading is a special kind of constructor which is used when you want to have multiple different kinds of constructors for different circumstances. In this case, this would be my overloaded constructor, as I've already created a basic constructor. Now I wanted to make something that has other alternatives. So you cannot have two constructors with the exact same parameters. This is because then they're just the exact same thing. An overloaded constructor will be ones with different parameters, such as this one right here. As only the name is provided, then only the name will change to according to whatever the n value of that string is, and the type and price are set to something that I've already predetermined. Okay, so now we are going to be moving on to this class attribute. So, for example, if I had something like another string, let's call this one t, so then we can use a value that we've already have. Now, if I were to put this in normally, the computer would be very confused as to which t I'm talking about in what circumstance. This is going to cause a lot of problems and will typically end up with either an error or a null value being given. To avoid this, you can use the this attribute. The this attribute refers to the object or class in use at the moment. For example, this factory class. So let's give it a shot. With the insertion of this dot, you can see that now the problem is fixed. You can see this also being used in other situations, such as over here with our GUI. We have buttons that are adding action listeners, and the this is being used to refer to this class. Same thing with these two thises. We are getting image icons for this class, as there could be, for example, multiple IOs. It is referring to this class specifically, where then it's getting the resource of the picture. So looking into J option panes now. J option panes are from the Swing Java class. And so what these are basically pre-built windows. There's a few types, for example, show message dialog, which then will just show a message where then you have the option to click OK. You have things such as show confirm dialog and show input dialog, where input dialog just gets you to send in a value of a string. So in this case, it's asking for a name, and you input that, which then will become the value of this string. And something like a show confirm dialog is where you have three options, yes, no, and cancel, which are all assigned to specific values. I believe 0 is yes, and then 1 is no, and then 2 is cancel. And on to object creation. So, as you can see right here, we have two forms of object creation. We have one, which is using the overload constructor, as I showed before, where because my if statements are checking if there was actually any values sent in for P or T, it will just send, if none are there, it will just send in N. And then over here, it is checking for if it was sent in. So this, I'm actually only looking at if T was sent in because P gets changed if it's not. So right now, what this is doing is once T is confirmed to have a text and it's not equal to null, it will then send it to the factory, which is our class for pizza creation, and it will send in all the values. So the type, so it'll say pizza, for instance, the name, which we have it set to default actually to Uncle Ben just because it's a silly program, and the price, which if nothing is put in there, it will be set to $15. Otherwise, it will be get text.
These right here are very simple acronyms that you'll see quite often when talking about Java. The first one, OOPS, don't actually include the S, is object-oriented programming, which essentially means that everything is not line by line like it is in C++, and objects are created from classes which are used throughout your entire program. API is Application Program Interface. And so for the other ones, I'm just going to quickly go over what they stand for. So API is Application Program Interface. IDE is Integrated Development Environment. So this is something like IntelliJ. JDK is the Java Developer Kit, which is Java, what you have to install to actually code it. And Java is coffee.